you're researching this, you might be wondering whether you need a reason to file for a divorce in Illinois. Well, maybe the marriage has been struggling for a long time, or maybe something happened recently that made things feel like they can't continue. A lot of people worry that they have to prove something dramatic, like cheating, abandonment, or abuse, just to get a divorce started. Every week, we see people come in with piles of screenshots and messages thinking they need to convince the judge they don't. I'm Jeff Hughes, lead attorney and CEO at Sterling Lawyers, and in this video, I'm breaking down the only grounds for divorce in Illinois and exactly what it means for your case. Let's jump into it. Illinois is a 100% no-fault divorce state, which means there's only one grounds for divorce, and that is irreconcilable differences. This replaced every fault-based ground. There is no longer any legal pathway to file because someone cheated, abandoned the relationship, was emotionally cruel, abused substances, or stopped contributing to the marriage. The goal now is to keep the divorce focused on practical outcomes, not on blame. I recall once we worked with someone who came in carrying a binder, a literal banker's box type of binder set, full of evidence of an affair. There were photos, messages, credit card charges, everything. They told us, I know I need to bring all of this to the judge. And we had to explain that none of this was even required to file. The judge never asked for it and wouldn't ask for it. The court simply wanted to confirm that there were irreconcilable differences and the case moved forward. Now, there are two ways to prove irreconcilable differences. Illinois gives you two methods to show that the marriage has broken down. First is testimony. If both spouses agree to the divorce, you can testify that the marriage is irretrievably broken and that counseling or reconciliation didn't resolve anything. And this is the most common route. A second way is by a 6-month separation. This is if one spouse contests the divorce. A 6-month separation creates an automatic legal presumption of irreconcilable differences. And importantly, separation can happen while living under the same roof as long as the spouses are living essentially separate lives within that same house. And this means separate bedrooms, no physical intimacy, and no shared finances or routines. And once that 6-month passes, a contested spouse can delay but not prevent the divorce. Now, fault no longer matters, but behavior can still affect parts of a case. Now, fault won't stop or change the grounds for divorce, but actions during the marriage certainly can affect things like property division. Now, what if there was wasteful dissipation of those assets? Another is parenting time with the children. Yet another is decision-making responsibilities. And, well, there could be the need for a temporary restraining order or a protective order because of behavior during the marriage. Well, we once worked with someone whose spouse drained a joint bank account on travel and gifts for another person. Now, that spending didn't affect whether the divorce could be filed, but it heavily affected the property division. The court required reimbursement of those funds to the marital estate before dividing anything else. Now, that adultery did not affect the grounds for the divorce, but you can sure bet that it absolutely affected the financial outcome in that case. Illinois keeps the divorce itself as no fault, but it still protects the marital estate. Now, residency requirements, these must be met. Before a judge can finalize a divorce, at least one spouse must live in Illinois for 90 days. Now, there are a few clarifications to this. You can file earlier than 90 days, but the judgment just cannot be entered until that 90-day requirement is met. Now, also, military members that are stationed in Illinois would qualify under this rule. And the rule applies regardless of where you were married. Now, can a spouse who refuses the divorce stop the process? The answer is no. And we see this often where one spouse tries to block the divorce simply by refusing to participate. Illinois courts will not force you to stay married. And if one spouse says, I don't want this, we can work this out, or I won't agree, then it falls back to either your testimony that the marriage is irretrievably broken, or if there's been a 6-month separation. These two factors will establish those no-fault grounds for a divorce. I recall a case one time where one of the spouses insisted 4 months. They said, I will not sign anything. And this dragged on for a long time. And in that case, the judge ultimately accepted the testimony of the other spouse and found that there were irreconcilable differences and issued the divorce over the objection of that spouse. The case did not become more complicated, it just took a bit longer. The court simply will not hold people in a marriage that they no longer want. Now, while the legal grounds may be simple, the issues that follow are not. Even though the grounds for divorce are straightforward, the divorce itself often is not. The judge will still need to resolve the division of property, parenting time if there are children, decision-making authority for children, child support, temporary financial needs, spousal maintenance, debt division, insurance, living arrangements, but yet none of this has anything to do with who caused the divorce. Illinois law is simply designed to separate marital dissolution from marital conflict. But you may say, Jeff, what about domestic violence? Is that impactful in a divorce? And the answer is yes. It does not affect the grounds, but it does affect so many other parts of a case. Illinois does not allow domestic violence as a legal ground for divorce, but it absolutely influences what happens during cases. It can lead to immediate protective orders, supervised parenting time, denied parenting time in extreme cases, exemptions from mediation, emergency custody modifications, and specific safety protocols that are inside the court process. Now, this is another area of the law where people often misunderstand how it works. The grounds, again, are still irreconcilable differences, and the safety protections are layered on top of that during a divorce. Now, also, as I stated earlier, adultery is not a ground for a divorce, but it can affect the division of property. Even in cases where there's been significant infidelity, the case still proceeds under irreconcilable differences. The cheating itself doesn't affect maintenance or property division, but spending money on the affair can be reimbursed to the marital estate. This is often one of the biggest misconceptions that we have to walk through with clients to help them understand how these two issues interplay. And you do not need evidence, screenshots, or witness statements. Illinois does not require you to prove the breakdown with screenshots, text messages, journals, therapy notes, police reports, or third-party witnesses. Again, one spouse's sworn testimony is all that's needed. The judges, they don't want drama, they just want clarity. Now, what about the length of the marriage? Does that affect grounds at all? Well, whether you're married for 4 months or 40 years, the grounds, they are the same. Illinois does not change the grounds based on the length of the marriage. Short marriage, long marriage, doesn't matter. Now, there are annulments. They are separate and only apply in very, very small, narrow situations like fraud, incapacity, underage marriage, things like that. Now that you know the legal grounds for divorce are simple, the next question is, what do I actually do? Now, this is often where people make huge mistakes that cost them money, parenting time, control of the process, access to the home, and long-term financial security. Now, while the grounds do not determine your divorce, your first step might. Now that you understand the grounds for a divorce in Illinois, the next step is learning the process and the pitfalls most people don't see coming. In this next video, I'll walk you through the exact steps of filing for a divorce in Illinois. If you want to protect your finances, protect your rights with your kids, and avoid the mistakes that we see all too often, you need to watch this next video. Let's talk it through step by step.